Hello, Bama fans. We've talked about this before, but could you imagine the turnaround Dabo could achieve at Clemson? And imagine him at Alabama this year? Let's analyze a bit about Dabo and DeBoer. Before the news, subscribe to the channel to receive more updates. The recent history of college football offers few contrasting studies as interesting as Dabo Swinney and Kalen DeBoer. Two coaches who, on very different paths, have established themselves as elite figures in the sport. And the question that many Alabama fans still ask silently, or sometimes not so silently, is inevitable. What would Dabo be like in Tuscaloosa? And, above all, was Kalen DeBoer really the right choice to succeed Nick Saban? To answer this, it's worth revisiting what each one built and what each one represents. When Dabo took over Clemson years ago, nobody bet that he would transform the program into a national powerhouse. And honestly, even after following this trajectory for so long, few imagined the turnaround he would achieve now in 2025. The Tigers entered this season surrounded by expectation, with a high ranking in the AP Top 25 and an ACC title under their belt. But nothing went as planned in the first few months. A 1-3 start can destroy teams, destroy locker rooms, and destroy projects, but it didn't destroy Clemson. Dabo held the group together, reorganized mentalities, and the team found a way back, finishing with a 7-5 record that, although far from what many predicted, was the result of a resilience that is difficult to replicate. Swinney himself called this roster one of the most resilient he has ever coached, and this coming from a coach who has led national championship teams. He recalled that no Clemson team had ever achieved 7 wins after starting so poorly. This recovery, crowned with a solid victory over South Carolina, is part of the tone that Dabo has always set for the program. The ability to respond, to unite, to persevere even when the outside world screams that it's all over. Clemson is heading towards another postseason, with the chance to extend its impressive streak of seasons with at least 8 wins, a mark historically matched only by Alabama and Georgia. This consistency explains why Dabo almost became Alabama's coach in the past. The succession to Saban would never have been simple. Alabama wouldn't have sought someone who simply delivered stability. They wanted someone who represented a clear path to competitive continuity. And given his resume, his achievements, and the culture he built, Dabo would have been an absolutely plausible choice. Surprising? No. It would, in fact, have been a logical transition. We're talking about a coach with national titles, numerous playoff appearances, and the ability to shake up the deep structures of a program. In many ways, his figure is almost symbiotic with the standard of excellence that Alabama has always demanded. But it was Kalen DeBoer who received the mission. And here comes the most important counterpoint. Because if Dabo represents continuity, DeBoer represents modernization. A coach who brought new layers of tactical aggression, offensive efficiency, and a mentality adapted to contemporary college football. And the result? In his first year at Alabama, while other programs went through turbulence, DeBoer led the Crimson Tide to a respectable 10-2 record, with a 7-1 record within the SEC, securing a spot in the conference championship game and keeping the team among the top 10 in the country. The 2 losses, Florida State in the opener and Oklahoma later in the season, were tough, but they didn't diminish the consistency of a team that evolved week after week. It's a strong, solid start with the scent of lasting success. Comparing Dabo and DeBoer, therefore, is not about finding a winner. It's about understanding what each represents. Dabo is the tradition of improbable comebacks, of deeply emotionally charged culture, of long cycles of consistency. DeBoer represents modern efficiency, surgical precision, and the rapid, pragmatic reconstruction of a competitive system under one of the highest pressures in sports. And what if Dabo were at Alabama today? It wouldn't be surprising. It would simply be a plausible alternative chapter within the logic of the sport. But that doesn't diminish, not for a second, the work DeBoer does. On the contrary, it reinforces it. Because if Kalen was chosen over such strong alternatives, including a coach of Dabo's caliber, it's because Alabama saw in him a project more aligned with the future. And so far, December 2025, everything indicates that Alabama got it right. DeBoer isn't just maintaining the Crimson Tide standard. He's riding his own path, with competence, with personality, and with a style of football that has given fans back something simple, but something that can never be lacking: confidence in tomorrow. On the eve of the most important game of the season, the Alabama Crimson Tide faces an extra opponent amidst preparations for the SEC championship game. Unsettling rumors involving coach Kalen DeBoer. While the team focuses on the decisive matchup against Georgia and fights for a spot in the college football playoff, speculation about the coach's future has begun to gain momentum nationally. The buzz started with the opening of the head coach position at Penn State, one of the most coveted positions in college football. Quickly, Kalen DeBoer's name began to be mentioned among possible candidates, something that naturally sparked attention in Tuscaloosa. DeBoer, who took over the most pressured position in the sport after Nick Saban's retirement, is in his second season leading the Crimson Tide, a season of clear improvement, but still accompanied by very high expectations. After a 9-4 record in his first year, a result seen as below the program's historical standard, DeBoer led Alabama to a 10-2 record this season and into SEC title contention. It's a considerable leap, a strong response, and an indication that the project is on the right track. However, some fans still linger in the shadow of Saban, a shadow that no coach in the country would be able to dispel in a short time. This pressure, coupled with the intensity of coaching Alabama, has opened the door to interpretations and speculation that are now growing in the most important week of the year. One who intensified this debate was Bobby Carpenter, former NFL linebacker and now national analyst. In a comment that resonated strongly, Carpenter stated that he doesn't believe DeBoer necessarily likes being Alabama's head coach and suggested he would be a legitimate underdog to take over Penn State. The statement served as a red flag for many fans, especially given the uncertainty it could generate in the final stretch of the season. It's important to emphasize, so far, none of this has been officially confirmed. DeBoer hasn't made any public statements expressing dissatisfaction with Alabama, nor has he mentioned any interest in leaving the Crimson Tide. On the contrary, all that's seen behind the scenes is absolute focus on the duel against Georgia and the bigger goal: competing for the national title. The coach knows that a victory on Saturday could, in addition to silencing rumors, definitively reinforce his image as the right choice to succeed Saban. Within college football, speculation is an inevitable part of the game. Big programs always flirt with elite coaches, and elite coaches always have their names involved in prestigious positions. This doesn't mean there's any concrete movement. And, in Alabama's case, there's an element that these conversations fail to capture: the real work DeBoer is doing within the locker room. Players, coaching staff, and management have reiterated their confidence in the project, and the team's growth on the field speaks for itself. Still, it's clear that the next chapters will be decisive. A victory in the SEC championship could not only put Alabama on the path to the playoffs, but also solidify DeBoer as the centerpiece of the program's future. With the right result and the right narrative, rumors dissipate. Big results tend to unite programs and strengthen foundations. Could Penn State be interested? It's possible, but so far there are no concrete steps. Alabama, on the other hand, has something that weighs more than any speculation: the chance to compete for a title, a committed roster, and a coach who, despite the external noise, continues to lead the team towards a moment that could define the season. and perhaps even his initial legacy with the Crimson Tide. Let's move forward. Kalen DeBoer didn't hide his perplexity at the possibility of Alabama missing the playoffs, even after everything the team has accomplished this season. 10 wins, 7 of them in the brutal SEC, including victories against ranked teams and challenging away games. The 27-20 win against Auburn at Jordan-Hare Stadium was another chapter in this resilient campaign, which secured the Tide a spot in the SEC championship against the Georgia Bulldogs. "That would leave me perplexed," DeBoer said about the possibility of missing out. And he's right. But here we are, in a system where the CFP committee seems to have criteria as fluid as the Tide. Until a few weeks ago, nobody could have imagined that rushing yards would be such a central point in the evaluations. Hunter Yurachek, Arkansas's athletic director and CFP chairman, brought this metric to the forefront, and now everyone is trying to interpret what it really means. Will Alabama's 158 rushing yards in the Iron Bowl be enough to impress these evaluators? Or will other variables, perhaps unknown even to the committee members themselves, ultimately weigh more heavily? The truth is, for Alabama, any discussion about their playoff fate must begin and end with a single word: victory. Winning against Georgia next week eliminates any and all doubt. A triumph at Mercedes-Benz Stadium not only guarantees an automatic spot in the CFP, but also reinforces the narrative that this team, even depleted and facing adversity, belongs among the best in the country. More than that, a victory could even guarantee the Tide a bye in the first round, depending on how the other matchups unfold. Losing to Georgia, on the other hand, is entering dangerous waters. Alabama would be handing its fate over to 12 people sitting in a room, whose decisions often seem to be guided more by intuition than logic. Last year, the committee kept SMU in Alabama's place, even after the Mustangs lost to Clemson in the ACC championship. But who can guarantee they'll do the same this year? Precedents are just that, precedents. They offer no real security. The scariest scenario for Alabama would be losing to Georgia and then watching BYU surprise Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship. If that happens, the conference will likely put 2 teams in the CFP, and the remaining space for the Tide will become even tighter. In a system where every detail matters, Alabama simply cannot afford to rely on outside favors or interpretations. All of this reinforces how crucial next Saturday will be. For Alabama, it's not just about playing Georgia. It's about asserting unequivocally that this team deserves to be among the top 4 in the country. It's about showing that, even with injuries and significant absences, the competitive spirit and adaptability remain intact. This is an opportunity for Kalen DeBoer to prove that his strategic vision can overcome any obstacle, and for the players to demonstrate that the Tide's legacy goes beyond individual names. There's something profoundly human in this whole situation. It's impossible not to empathize with DeBoer's position, who led his team with resilience and intelligence, but now needs to rely on a process that often seems arbitrary. It's impossible not to admire the determination of this group of players, who continued fighting even when the path became more difficult. And it's impossible not to question a system that allows so much uncertainty to persist until the very last moment. Alabama controls its destiny. A victory against Georgia solves everything. It secures the spot, silences the critics, and reaffirms the Tide's place among the giants of college football. Because, in the world of college football, nothing is more valuable than being Bama. Leave your comments.